Another issue that's closely related to that is the juvenile code. You will hear a report on that today, and it will be the endorsement of that legislation will be on your agenda in August. That has been a labor of love for a number of years, starting with the project of the Younger Lawyers Division and going forward with Georgia Appleseed and Just Georgia to come up with that legislation. It will be out for a comment period this summer, and I encourage you to look at it closely, to ask anyone in your circuit who works closely with the juvenile justice system to examine it, fly spec it, let us know if there's anything that needs to be fixed before we vote on it to endorse it in August. Another part of stewardship is judicial evaluation. We've seen in the last couple of years some problems with particular members, a very small percentage of judges, and our statewide judicial evaluation committee will continue to work closely with Governor Deal's judicial nominating commission to screen applicants for judgeships. Legislation is an area that we're very active in. Lester was down at the Capitol practically full time during the session, dealing with the House and Senate Judiciary Committees and leadership and really being in there in the trenches. And finally getting that evidence code passed after 20-something years of effort by the bar. Lester carried the ball over the goal line. Our Advisory Committee on Legislation this year will be chaired by Chuck Clay, a former state senator from Marietta, former Republican state senator. The vice chair will be Nick Moritakis, my classmate, as a former Democratic state representative from DeKalb County. We've got an awful lot of good people engaged in that work. Sandy Bayer, a member of this board, is a former teacher, will chair our law-related education program, which is a descendant of the program in which she was involved with as a teacher that got her interested in law. Hank Fellows will chair the Committee on Judicial Procedure to look at some of the nitty-gritty details of how we actually get stuff done in court. Tony Del Campo will chair a committee on court interpreters to try to expand and improve upon the availability of interpreters in the less common languages. It's fairly easy to get a Spanish interpreter. You start looking for one in Tinde or Bangla or Urdu or something, which is in our population in the metro Atlanta area and other places. It gets a lot harder. So we'll have a very diverse committee working on that. Chris Phelps will continue with the Finance Committee. Frank Strickland will chair the Programs Committee to really look at cost effectiveness of some of the things we have in our budget and try to bend that cost curve down going forward. Bob Persons, a member of this board, another aspect of stewardship, will chair a committee on risk management and disaster preparedness. And Pat O'Connor, one of the most experienced and wise members of this board, will chair the long-range planning committee to look at some of the long-term trends in the legal profession that face us all and how that affects both the profession in Georgia and the way the organized bar reacts to it. We have issues going on in our profession in terms of outsourcing internationally, in terms of commoditization of legal services, in terms of more do-it-yourself stuff, the pro se movement, and Pat's committee will look at those issues in depth. Now, the second theme is calling. When we're working in the muddy trenches of the law, it's kind of hard to envision what we're doing as a high calling for service. But it is, and it should be. And not all of us can find an aspect of calling in the law as pure as Ben Mitchum, a member of this board who's about to leave for a year in Haiti, working with Reconstruction down there, or Tom Rawlings, a Georgia lawyer from Sandersville, who I talked with a couple of weeks ago, who is now working with the International Justice Ministry on combating sex slavery in Guatemala. Not many of us find a calling that pure. But we can bloom where we're planted and find our calling, our high calling, in our own workplace, in our own environment, our own community. We will have, a lot of lawyers find their calling in a small town. That's where I thought I would be, and stuff happened, and I wound up in Atlanta. But Patrick Millsaps and Camilla will chair a new committee on Main Street lawyers to provide guidance and mentoring for lawyers who want to go build their lives and careers in smaller communities around Georgia. Thomas Herman will chair the local and voluntary bars committee. And one of the things that they will work on is developing a bar leadership institute to help new officers of local bars become equipped for that. The Law Practice Management Program Committee will be chaired by Sally Akins from Savannah, and they will work on some new tools and some new training materials, a lot of which we hope will be online in our revamped website, which will be rebuilt, to help lawyers who aren't going to take a day off from work to go to a law practice management seminar, but they and their staffs can sit there at night and watch some stuff and get that training. The Member Benefits Committee will be chaired by John Kennedy, and they're going to do a great job in expanding our menu of member benefits. None of us know how long we have. And we all know lawyers who drop dead in their 70s or 80s still working, and sole practitioners who do that. But I've known people in their 20s and 30s to whom that's happened, and they hadn't planned on it. Guy I shared a desk with in the DA's office back in the 70s hydroplaned into a tree when he was 29 on the way to court one morning. Now, when lawyers die or are disabled in the middle of practice, as solos particularly, or small firms, and they haven't made arrangements for what happens to their clients and to their practice, it is a problem for their estates. It's a problem for the bar. Our general counsel's office has to go out and recruit people to be receivers, and it's a mess. We've had an aging lawyers committee for a while that hasn't really gotten this done. We're going to call this the Continuity of Practice Committee, and it will be chaired by Craig Stafford from Hinesville, who has already hit the ground running, taking planning guides developed in New York and North Carolina by which lawyers can simply take the forms, fill in the blanks, get a buddy, do a buddy system. You drop dead, I'll take care of you. I drop dead, you take care of my clients, so that we can have some planning for continuity of taking care of clients and practices. A lot of lawyers these days are pursuing callings other than the traditional practice of law. Damon Elmore, who's a member of this board, will chair a committee on non-traditional legal careers. That will include people for business and consulting and academia, a riverkeeper, and so forth, to look at ways that the bar can remain relevant to those lawyers who are in something other than traditional law practice, and their experiences in those fields can in turn benefit the profession. Part of our calling and part of our stewardship is to protect the public from the predators in our midst. There's not much we can do about legal advertising in the large sense. We can't prohibit very much at all under the constitutional issues explained in a number of federal court decisions. But we can have disclosure and disclaimer requirements that are relevant to consumer choice. And we will have a Fair Market Practices Committee that will look at those issues in conjunction with the Disciplinary Rules Committee to try to develop, some reasonable, rational disclosure and disclaimer requirements that would be bulletproof in court. The third theme is love. There are very few occupations that offer as much opportunity or as much varied opportunity for service to people who are hurting as the law. People in Main Street practices don't lack for opportunities to help people pro bono or low bono basis. They come in off the street and you help them and don't get paid or don't get paid much. People in a corporate environment or a big firm in a skyscraper may have to look a little harder for those opportunities. So our pro bono committee, or our Access to Justice committee, will continue to be chaired by Tim Floyd at Mercer Law School. And working closely with Mike Monahan on the staff in the office. And one thing that they will do is very shortly develop a one-stop shop for pro bono opportunities in Georgia. So somebody can just go straight from the homepage of the bar website and go out there and find, an array of pro bono opportunities around the state. It's a small step, but it's one we can do fairly easily. Now, the Georgia Legal Services Program was originally sort of a creature of this bar some 40 years ago. Georgia Legal Services works at the bleeding edge, dealing with Georgians who are at the bottom of the economic ladder. And with this economy, as the needs have grown to deal with issues that most lawyers aren't going to take willingly because they don't get paid for it, the funding for Georgia Legal Services has gone down, and it continues to go down from various funding sources. You have at your places, at your tables, forms to fill out to start an automatic monthly donation to Georgia Legal Services. And I ask you to join me in donating to Georgia Legal Services on a painless monthly basis, and urge others in your communities, in your circuits, to join in that and to give until it feels good. Not till it hurts, but till it feels good. We have a lawyer assistance program where most of the work is outsourced, but we have a committee that oversees it, that deals with substance abuse and mental health issues in the profession. Some of the scariest statistics I've run across is a study at Johns Hopkins that studied 104 occupations for rates of clinical depression. Guess who's number one? We are. There's a study from the ABA that studied alcohol abuse in the legal profession. They found that 13% of all lawyers were consuming an average of 6 or more alcoholic drinks per day. We're not talking about a party every now and then, folks. We're talking about every day when you get home from work. That's a lot. I've had friends who I wish I had gotten into a program instead of being an enabler before it was too late to save them and their careers. So I urge you that if you see people around you who are on that slippery slope, contact the program and try to get them into it. Finally, there's a new program that we're starting this year that will be chaired by Judge Bill Roomer from Columbus that we're borrowing from the Louisiana Bar. It's called SOLACE. It's an awkward acronym for something I never can remember. But basically what the SOLACE program does in Louisiana is when a member of the bar or their law staffs or the court staffs have a medical crisis in their family, this committee looks for something small and practical that can be done, a meaningful assistance. I've been on their listserv for the past year. Most of the requests I see are where some family needs a place to stay near a cancer treatment center or a transplant center on the other side of the country for a month or something of that nature. One was for help in rehabilitating or fixing up a garage apartment for a law student who had become a quadriplegic. One time they had a request that went out at 11 o'clock in the morning on email from Judge Zaney, where a member of the Louisiana Bar had had a catastrophic injury or illness in South Africa and did not have medevac coverage. By 1 o'clock, they had a response from a doctor who had received it forwarded from his brother-in-law, who was a lawyer. This doctor was also a pilot, and he said, 2 hours after the request went out, "I'll take my plane to Africa, and I'll bring him home." I hope that this experiment will enable us to begin to cultivate a more of a caring and loving community within the legal profession and the legal community in Georgia. So, stewardship, caring, love. I hope that together working in all these areas, most of which I'm delegating and saying, y'all go do it, will help us to begin to work toward a more transcendent view of our lives and our professions as lawyers. And remember that our worst mistakes are mathematical, in that we miscalculate the brevity of life and the length of eternity. God bless you all.